Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Janine Best, and I will be going over the FDA perspective and overview of the Pregnancy and Lactation Labeling Rule, otherwise known as PLLR. So I will first provide you with a brief history, go into an overview of changes to labeling based on PLLR, and provide you some PLLR resources. So the Pregnancy and Lactation Labeling Rule, published on December 4th, 2014. This rule amends the Physician Labeling Rule because at the time in 2006 when the Physician Labeling Rule published, the Pregnancy and Lactation subsection revisions were deferred because they weren't ready at that time. Under PLLR, all prescription drugs that are required to comply with the Physician Labeling Rule must revise the content and format of subsections 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3. There is a staggered implementation over 3 to 5 years, and all labeling must have the pregnancy category removed from it by prior to June 30th, 2018. And here's just a historical overview of pregnancy labeling. In 1979, the pregnancy categories were established by regulation. It became shortly apparent that these categories didn't adequately convey an appropriate risk-benefit decision-making for prescribing drug products. So in 1994, the FDA began a pregnancy labeling initiative and had a Part 15 hearing. After that time, expert input was obtained from advisory committees and focus groups, and the proposed rule was written with the new physician rule labeling format. However, because the rule was not ready at the time that the physician labeling rule was, the physician labeling rule did go out in 2006, and the draft PLLR was not issued till 2008. Between 2008 and 2013, the FDA reviewed all the public comments received and revised the rule, which finally published this past December. So what does PLLR do? In the current labeling, the subsections 8.1 pregnancy, 8.2 labor and delivery, and 8.3 nursing mothers become under PLLR. 8.1 remains pregnancy, 8.2 becomes lactation, and the old labor and delivery moves into the pregnancy subsection, and 8.3 is a newly created subsection called females and males of reproductive potential. So under the pregnancy subsection, there are 4 potential headings that can be used under this subsection. Only one is required. The other 3 are optional and only used if applicable. The first optional heading under the pregnancy subsection is pregnancy exposure registry. And if your drug has a scientifically valid pregnancy registry, you are supposed to include the first sentence in your labeling. There is a pregnancy exposure registry that monitors outcomes in women exposed to drug named during pregnancy. You are also required to provide contact information, and the second sentence is an example of one way to do that. And if you do have a pregnancy exposure registry, the availability of this registry should also be stated in Section 17 of the patient counseling information so prescribers can advise patients on the availability. Then we have the pregnancy risk summary. The risk summary is the required heading under the pregnancy subsection. And this heading provides risk statements that describe the risk of adverse developmental outcomes based on all relevant data. And this is for drugs with systemic absorption. If you have a drug, if your drug has no systemic absorption, the only information you need under the risk summary is the following statement. Drug name is not absorbed systemically following route of administration, and maternal use is not expected to result in fetal exposure to the drug. And that'll end the information that you need under the pregnancy subsection. For drugs that do have systemic absorption, you have 2 required risk summaries. One is based on human data, one is based on animal data, and an optional risk statement based on the drug pharmacology if your drug has a well understood mechanism of action with potential associated risks. For the human data summary, you need to summarize your available human data or provide a statement when no human data are available to establish a drug-associated risk. Now, we understand when your drugs are first approved, especially with a new molecular entity, it's unlikely that you will have any human data to support the statement. So your statement will just be that there is no human data to inform a drug-associated risk. However, as your drug is marketed, we expect you to populate this subsection with this heading with information. And so when efficacy supplements are submitted, or when you submit your application, your supplement to comply with PLLR, we expect that you will have reviewed the available human data and submitted a summary of that information and also proposed labeling edits if appropriate. Now, your animal data summary statement is a clinically relevant summary of any available animal data or a statement that no data exists. Also, under the risk summary, a statement, background risk statement providing the background rate of major birth defects and miscarriage in the U.S. general population and in the diseased population, if available, is required. And if use of a drug is contraindicated during pregnancy, that information must be stated first in the risk summary.